Hey there everybody, just moving into the final stage highlights, just to bring them in line with everything else I've been doing. And I'm not really going to do fades on these trousers, I don't think, just literally picking out leading edges. This is miniature paints, earth brown I'm using. And I just want these sort of crease highlights, I think, and just literally just the leading edges, and this will be the end of these guys. Or should I maybe do a bit of fading? I don't really want to go into this too much in depth because I think you've seen enough on other videos. The main thing here is just colour choices. This earth brown's like I mean, I think you could probably get the same if I mixed the charred brown I initially used for the trousers with white. And just super carefully picking out these leading edges. I don't want anything more than a highlighted edge. And I don't want to do fades because I want these to be sort of crisp. And so I want crisp edges. To get crisp edges, you need, or the sense of crisp edges, you need clean lines. This is the same in drawing. If you want something to look crisp, you want just a nice clean line, no sort of feathering or so. If you look at, I don't know, if you look at anime. Anime is a good example of a clean line, because like all the black line work is fairly minimal, and it's but it does the job, right? And it gives you every indication that you need in order to understand the form, whilst using the bare minimum, and that's kind of what's meant when you say a clean line. Also, it's this kind of straight line, no fading. It does take time because you have to just pick everything out very carefully. But it'll just give you all of these sort of last minute highlights. I mean, maybe on something like this I should do a little bit of a fade. And this is because there is a clean edge into a panel. So if I just wet up the panel using a spare brush, and then I apply the highlight just to the leading edge like I have been doing, and you see it just starts to bleed by itself into the rest. But then what I don't want is I don't want it to bleed. I don't want it to be too harsh of a bleed. So then if I remove the water, it gives me a bit of a bleed, a bit of a fade, and I can just retouch in the leading edge, which I want to be strong still, so it's like everything else. This is the slow processes. I like that about painting, actually. It's just one of those things that makes you take your time. So if you are painting right now, slow down, take it easy, man. In fact, whatever you're doing right now, slow down, just take it easy, man. This is as good as it gets, really. Not doing anything special as such, just achieving something minor that's step in the right direction, doing something which moves towards something. Also, once these dudes are done, I can start getting into reports. I think I'll probably do a how-to first, just to make sure I've got my head properly around the rules, you know. And then you can, anybody who sort of knows the Infinity rules well or whatever, you can all, you don't know what you're on about. And I shall learn, and I shall get better. The other thing that's quite useful about having done the grey or the sort of painted the brown over a pre-highlighted colour range is because there's already kind of subtle highlights built in and a depth of tonal quality built in that actually helps to indicate where to highlight. Which can sometimes be a problem, not always. You also notice that I'm trying to get the angle of the brush rather than the tip of the brush to pick out the highlight. Again, this is because if you start using brush stroke, you'll start catching the edges around the area you're highlighting rather than just the leading edges. I'm not going to show you what I mean because that would involve ruining the miniature. Like here you see I can, and it also means that you can use the brush in a way which is facilitating the highlight without, sometimes you can just brush in multiple highlights at once. And it doesn't mean you're dry brushing, this is still wet brushing. It's just that if a miniature has got a lot of these kind of rises and falls, like the folds of this fabric, which is actually incredibly well sculpted, I might add. The actual sculpting will facilitate this. You don't need to sort of falsify. Like even here, there's a slight highlight in there. And where you've dry brushed before and there's a bit of differentiation still shining through, that will just give you enough of an indicator for this. And this is highlight, which means it is the lightest colour in the tonal range on this material. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be really bright. What it does mean is that it needs to be high contrast. So for instance, just because it's black doesn't mean it needs to be highlighted up to white, and in fact if you highlight something up to white, you'll probably find that it starts losing its sense of blackness. I'll do something with the hair in a bit. So yeah, that's just the highlight on the trousers. Like I say, it's pretty subtle, and earth brown is, my guess would be if you did 1 part charred brown from the Vallejo range and 1 part white just from any part of the Vallejo range. Alternatively, I'm using earth brown from the miniature paints range. I'll have to go and check whether they're still available. But if you have a look around for them, they come in decent sized pots as well, or they used to. What I'm using is a decent size anyway. The kind of pot that seems to last forever. I've had this pot for many years now. Getting the last little. The other point highlighting is just to sort of bring out the details. I think for me as well, I quite like this kind of brushed highlight, because it's a little bit like painterly, where it's like it suits the paintbrush, and it's not fades are cool, but brush mark is also cool in my opinion if it's used well. It's just not so easy to use well all the time, and certain things like this kind of fabric-y look really helps with that. So yeah, that's the final highlight, and just for comparative purposes, there's one with and one without highlights side by side, just so you can see the difference. So I'm just going to crack on and get all everybody's trousers in scratch, up to scratch, and I will keep moving on with highlights. Catch you in a moment. So just moving on to highlighting the red, and I've got a mix here of gore red and it's the heavy orange, it's the opaque orange. The reason I'm using the opaque orange is it's paler than the red, and it seems to have some kind of white pigmentation because it's pushed it towards the pink scale. But I'm using it because I'm trying to avoid the pink scale, and I don't want it to I don't want my red to end up looking pink, which is always a risk for me, I think, with reds. I'm just going to keep this as a subtle highlight, even more so I think than my trousers in some respects. Once again, this is just about really just trying to introduce something which will separate one colour from the other. I mean, kind of this is going to be my army, really. If I'm working towards tournaments and stuff, I think at the moment, either that or kind of pure ALF. I mean, hell, I might even go for the underdogs at some point. Just look who is least represented. I think it's Hack Islam. And then do an army of simulation, probably the least represented army then. As far as I can tell, Yijing seems to be a lot of people are playing it's the other sectorial army. It's the sort of the agents and operatives types. Sorry, it's got my brush is acquired. Blob at the end, no good. This is just enough to create light, not so much as to start moving the colour away from red. Like I say, I don't want to end up with something that looks pink, which is always the risk of red. And this is why a lot of the time you see, for instance, red tends to be moved towards orange for a highlight. I'm trying to sort of sit somewhere in the middle. I am using a kind of orangey, pinky, reddy colour, but it's not perfect by any means. It's just sort of making sure that I'm keeping these and the only reason I'm really doing this, I mean, they were as such completely battlefield ready. You could have done, you know, if you want to get them battle ready, just use the black and white and then chuck a paint down. Now, I've also been looking at, started to look at army lists a bit more, and I'll start doing more stuff to do with that, and maybe even just sort of. But your sort of light infantry are actually really important in every army list going in this game. mostly because they are cheap. You can have as many of them as you like, and they provide you with orders. So as long as they are regulars, they are worth having. Because they will improve your order pool. Yeah, this is quite difficult to see, but there's actually a whole series of little panels in here, which is like some kind of plating up the leg almost. Okay, you see one of the little panels here, but I'll just touch that in. Now, this is also kind of where the transparency of the paint pays off, because even though it is quite you can sometimes I can finally lay up something that appears to be a strong colour, and actually it's not quite as strong as you first thought. And so when it dries, it actually dries with an unexpected level of transparency. And sometimes that can be a good thing. So I'm just going to smooth that out. I doubt if I'll do final highlights to white, but I might do another tier of white, we'll see. Also, I'm running highlights in around the interior here. You don't actually have to highlight everything. Sometimes it can be more effective to highlight certain bits and leave other bits unhighlighted. And this can add to the tonal quality of your overall miniature. Yeah, so going back to this sort of army list stuff, I've been thinking about your sort of ratios, because in order to field a tag and make a tag effective, tags like suck up a lot of points. When I look at historical or tournaments that have happened in the past, and tournament kind of lists that have happened in the past, up until the point where it was kind of insisted upon that a tag be taken in an army list. Actually, most army lists didn't bother with them, and it's because although it was a unit, point for point relative to another unit, they're kind of valid and valuable. The reason they're not cost effective is they don't provide any additional orders. So when you sunk like a third of your points value or a quarter of your points value virtually into a single unit, and you're only getting one order, it actually becomes more points effective to be taking light infantry. So that makes this one of the few games where the quantity of light infantry you can field for the points cost, it actually balances out. That light infantry often works out as better than your sort of heavy armoured stuff, which is unusual. Most games function the other way around, and quite often they function the other way around because the heavier stuff so outclasses the lighter stuff that it virtually moots it as being valid. I think the other side of it is that if your tag gets taken out, that's a lot of points. You know, it's virtually a quarter or a third of your. I mean, if you're playing 300 points, it's virtually a third. If it's 400 points, it's virtually a quarter. I mean, if you're playing 150 points, it's half your blooming. It's half your army's value. So you're virtually routing the loss of your tag. So it's actually not worth fielding a tag in 150 point force. Unless you're fielding some kind of force that doesn't really care about being broken. Like, I don't know, Marek's Combine Army type malarkey. Yeah, it's not everywhere that I'm touching in this. And it's a pretty subtle highlight, but I think it's just enough to make a difference. I've just got that lead arm to do. Again, like I say, you don't want to go OTT with this. If you go OTT with this, you'll end up with the red will start to look like it's pink. Also take into account you've got a lot of depth of tonality from the actual initial paint process. So you just want to use this as something to just sort of make the edges zing a bit, stand out a bit. I have one Oyori, which is the Japanese sectorial army tag. I mean, every army I get, I'm always going to get a tag. I love them. I think they're beautiful minis, and they're actually a significant part of the reason why I'm playing this game at all. Haven't painted any yet, partly because you need all your basic troops done first. But I have bought the pilots for them as well, because for me that's pretty important, having all the sundries. I'm very kind of pro having all the sundries. And I'm just touching a little bit into the gap in between, just to sort of bring out the redness. I'm just gonna do the leading edge of this panel here, around here. I think that'll be that. Touching the elbow. Just enough to give you that distinction. Okay, so I'm going to crack on, I'll get the other dudes done. I'll just do a comparison in a second. Hang on. So that's the red with and the red without the highlight, so you can just sort of see it, just it gives that extra bit of depth tone and helps to identify things a little bit better. Okay, so I'll get the red done on the other guys and I'll be with you in a minute. It says the red all done, so I'm just going to move on to the green, which is just on the boots. And I'm just using a khaki for highlighting this. And it's going to be quite a high contrast one. And I'm just picking out little details really. In fact, I might have to slightly too high contrast. Sorry, it might be slightly too high contrast. Just trying to catch in the edge of the sole. This is also I'm using khaki because it's quite yellow, so it will sit better with the red than a sort of a dark green. If you use the dark green, is what made it look a bit like elf shoes, whereas by using khaki here I'm able to just start painting in. You see I'm kind of almost painting in the details here, and it's just a way in this instance of creating a lot more of the shoe. Shoes, do they matter? Do feet matter on miniature? I'm not sure. Normally on a miniature you want to draw your attention to the face. And also, I'm going to paint these like this and I'm going to muddy them up. So again, the high contrast between the khaki and the dark green kind of works in my favour when it comes to that sort of muddying up process. I do want them to blend a little bit though. Again, this is a nice thing about Vallejo paint, where you just sort of in part it fades quite a lot. So you can do this kind of high contrast thing where you use the high contrast paint. The other nice thing about having them on a base rather than which isn't the base they're going to be, is it doesn't matter if you paint this base. Because I'm using these sort of transparent bases, I mean normally I suppose it doesn't really matter. You should make your bases that you're going to mount them on before you mount them for painting, or you should use a separate device for holding them whilst you're painting. I've recently seen that there are clamps available for that purpose. It's interesting because I have thought about something like that myself and then written it off as unnecessary. It is interesting that they do exist, which goes to show that some people do think that they're worth having. And certainly in some respects, if you have something that's significantly larger to hold your miniature, it's easier to hold, it's less tiring on your hands. So if you're painting a lot, then that will help you quite considerably, I would have thought. So yeah, I'm really loving it. I'm getting stuck into my JSA stuff now. In terms of army lists at the moment, the stuff I have, it's not my ideal army list. It was an affordable army list, and like I say, I've been looking a lot more into army lists run by people in tournaments and stuff. And one of the common factors is they all use drones. Quite a lot of them use the 360 reaction drones with a HMG or equivalent, and that makes sense. It's a very cheap HMG. It's got 360 degree reaction, so you can use it as it's a pretty cheap way of getting all round cover. Also a really great kind of support unit, a lot of versatility. But also people use other of the drones as well, for different reasons. Like the 8-point drones, you know, it's a cheap order. Simple as, no questions asked. So yeah, that's just with the shoes touched in, just so you can see the difference. But take into account this doesn't have to be perfect. Also, it can be quite high contrast in this instance because I'm going to muddy up the boots when they're done. So like, you can see the unhighlighted and highlighted green. I hope you can. So I'm just going to crack on and get these guys done, and I'll be back with you shortly. Just going to do a final edge on the whites. So I'm just going to take leading edges. Not so fussed about the whole panel getting made any more white. Just bring the white up a little bit. Create some additional contrast in the white. So when you sort of have two panels like this, distinctly leading edge on one. Also make the leading edge on the next one distinct. And just to create extra little bits of separation, or even to join bits together in places where things become separated which perhaps aren't actually separated. Final last little cleanups where the red has gone over the edges in this particular instance. Put them in some little bits of brightness. Just trying to, again, when you're highlighting, just trying to sort of make everything come together and sing a little bit more than it did before. Not strictly speaking trying to paint, so but if you do get tags, I mean, coming back to army list for a second, I think the tags are the most viable when you've got a load of cheap stuff which is functional and useful in its own right, but really it's just there as to facilitate the tag. I mean, you might even find, like, if you use every faction has a drone which can use sat lock, which is using like satellite image and stuff, and if you use the drones which provide hacking and the support for that, then that can actually become quite an effective way of pinning down, suppressing. Also, if you deploy a lot of sniffer units, this can be an effective way of messing up anybody that's using quite a lot of thermoptic camouflage or what have you. So it's not necessarily essential to have cheap infantry, but again, with something like a sectorial army, you have the possibility of making fire groups. Also, if you can set them up right on the battlefield, potentially you can pin down much heavier formations with your light formations, because you can be at the point where, sorry, get back in focus, I don't know what happened there. Keep on moving around, sorry. You can get to the point where you have enough firepower set up in the right way so that people can't just set up so they're sort of not quite coming around a corner, or if you can use elevations to your advantage so that people are sort of stood up above one another, so that if someone does come around a corner you get multiple shooters. And so if you take your light formation and actually optimize its shooting possibility, you could have someone not being willing to move because you shut down large areas of the board by virtue of numbers, so that wherever they go they get a shed load of firepower levelled at them. And if you can have this kind of reaction, then again, because you have the possibility of being more places at once, a load of light infantry can be more effective than the higher quality heavy troops. And like I said, a tournament list I've been looking at anyway, there is a hell of a lot of diversity in terms of how they're making these kind of selections. And there is a hell of a lot of lists which primary focus is lots of light infantry / drones. But I'm kind of glad of that. I'm a little bit sick of super elite games, but I do want to make tags work because I freaking love them. But I also like the challenge of it not necessarily being the most effective unit in the game. In some respects you might want to hold your tags back, use them as a finishing off unit, so that you spend like your first turn setting everything up so it's how you want it to be to optimize your tag, and then using your tag to finish off. It makes sense to me. So they go, just sort of neatening up the white, adding an additional. It's just sort of making it stand out a little bit more. It's not massively different, but you can just sort of see if you look sort of, it's subtle, but it does make a difference. So I'm just going to crack on, get the white done on the other guys, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to hair. I think I'm going to leave the guns. I'm quite happy with them as that kind of muted black tone. This is just a one part white to about 3 or 4 parts black. So just ever so slightly off black. I'm just using that to run a highlight. In fact, I will take it ever so lighter. So this is now probably about 1 part black, 2 parts white. Well, it is a grey. Now if you wanna, I don't want to destroy the black illusion. And if you use, I mean, you could tint this slightly blue maybe, but I don't want this to move too far away from black. So it's just ever so subtle. I've just got the other guy to do, in fact, see his eyes here. There is a slight difference on this guy from her. He's got a tash. And so I just do a little bit of final work on his tash as well. See if this goes in too heavily. You run the risk of the hair looking grey. To the point where I'm actually going to take some of the other much darker. And I'm going to just dry brush that back in over the top. Just to turn it back a bit. No. Alright, I'm going to have to do a final bit on his face as well, sorry. And then I'm just taking the darker mixed colour here. I'm just trying to touch in the tash line. And just touch in the beard line. Trying to make vertical strokes so the beard feels like a beardy kind of fur. I might even just touch it in so it's like surrounds the mouth. So he's got the sort of side bits around, so he's got the total mouth frame goatee going on. And then just get in under his chin from the side here. Just want it to be neat. As I said, I'll just touch up the skin on his face and then I'll get back to you and I'll just show you the I'll touch up the skin on his face and then I'll do muddying up his boots and then they'll be done. Then it's just on to muddying the boots. And this is just a heavy golden brown mixed with the dregs of the grey, and then just bob it on and then get it off. Make a mess of the boots. Remember, when you're doing stuff like this, always the inside edge of the thigh or the inside edge of the boot is the bit which should be the most mucky. Because when you know, it's where your ankles drag mud up onto the rest of your feet. You do get a splash as well, but just a guide. So tips of the toes, do the outside edges, remove some of that paint, do the backs, but make sure that if you're going to go high up, it's always on the inside edges. And knock it back down again. If you want to do a bit up the outside as well, do so, but just keep in mind that it should always be worse on the inside edges than it is on the exterior edges. So I'm going to do that, and the second thing is I don't have any here, sorry, I'm just getting in the way of the camera. I thought I had another one. There you go. Sorry about that. There's a brown ink. Apparently, the Vallejo inks don't come with a brown. This is an old GW brown ink. It's like a proper dark brown. You only need a teeny weeny bit of this, and just want to dot in and then again remove. Just to create a bit of tonal variation in amongst the sort of muddy patches. And make it look like the mud isn't dried in but still sort of wet. Again, just taking another brush. Removing it a bit in places, and there you go, that's sort of your muddy feet effect. So get these guys done and then I'll give you a close-up of what everybody looks like. Catch you in a mo. Here's the end result, and there I'll just give you a quick twizz. But this is my Keisotsu Butai. I'm finished. You might notice that I have put in eyebrows now. I'm pretty happy, I think. And actually, I normally really hate red and white uniform schemes, or red/white. Either of these. The only army I've ever seen look good in white is the French 7 Years War types, the tricorns. But that's only because I played them so many times that I just got to a point where I was massively familiar with them, and so I've often found red colour schemes, they only really make sense if you're talking in terms of British line infantry from Napoleonic colonial kind of eras, Malburian, 7 Years War, New Model Army, eras where wearing bright colours was a thing because it was about being seen and scaring each other. You want large formations to be noticed. So I hope it's been used to you and you've enjoyed seeing how these guys are coming along. The next set of vids will be moving on to the individual characters from the Japanese sectorial army. So enjoy your painting, have good and take care. Bye bye.